Time and space in the city. In the street funk on Mac, the smell of the junking junk of the human mind. Ground Zero television heroes, Bailout Cruise and death in my pen. Flag waving thunder, Babylon slumber. In time and space city, working the money pimp computer slave. New mind stomp of circumstance and pomp. And death is video glass and corporate rap. Baggy head winning superstars on deep ribbing trips of ego. And time and space of the city crawls from my tongue like Friday night dressed in hero chic drag. As a chiseled beat of soul and sleep, conch fried sweet. In labor's price jail, in prison perpetrating schemes and doo-doo dreams of beauty. In time and space in Detroit is their mega mind. Backspace is ground zero. Greyhound escapes. And fake shake death and illusory wealth. And the HMO is dope, smoke, taupe, factory hope. Stereo blues in Center City. And the wicked are celebrated. Resuscitated shells watch we die in the living lifetime. A space change of funky, junky shifts. And we blow rips of walls and winners and movie renters. For miles in the sky and the sweet flag goodbye. And we become the gun of time and space. And neon freaks in the deep fix of channel hip. We are again exploded and eroded youth decay. And money won't speak. And time won't creep. We fall into the deep sleep of yes. An affirmation of impotent masturbation. Looking for the good in canned rally time. And we space in the limits of man. And think of cesspool Sundays. We only see the paper heads, paper worlds, the DNA. The space won't speak and time won't creep. And we scream at the glitter of time. Paraded as life. Real as asphalt. Real as industry. Real as death. Two-legged money machine and the speak of doom. Pimped out cartoon war zones between the mind of God and plastic knives. And the rope genius of man. Spitting techno plans. The secret ritual futures of slave work and flesh. And the hype of sex. And the hype of speed, proto-cerebral greed. And the time and space in Spirit City is in the gate of the mouth and hustled bouts. And her head is only a rack for skin. City Hall Mall, only a hat of the freed to see seeds of the common mind. And penny witches of cool. And master fronts of liquid games in the street of color. And dreams that break all speed rhythms of perpetuated nows. And time is the devil and space is never level. As the media limits the real. Sugar-coated pills of glitter and money won't speak. And time won't creep. Insane boogie brain, lame drain of blood on channel hip. The pimp of nasty trips of time and space in the city.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Horizons in Poetry 2022 and 2023, which is made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. The opening and closing video was created by Ascended Visions and features Ron Allen's recording Proto Cool from his spoken word CD, Painted Mind Code. Horizons in Poetry was founded by Ron Allen, Wardell Montgomery, and John Mason in 1982 in the Cass Corridor. This monthly open mic series ran for over 2 decades, hosted alternately by Ron Allen, Sharon Smith Knight, and Trinidad Sanchez.
The Ron Allen Project is a multimedia exhibit reflecting the work and art of poet, playwright, sobriety mentor, and my friend, Dharma priest, Ron Bodhidharma Allen, during the years that he lived in Detroit's Cass Corridor. This exhibit will go up this fall at Detroit's Hannan Center and Kayrod Gallery. So look for it. Many thanks to the Fab Five who wrote the final submission for the Night's Art Challenge. And these folks are Carla Harriman, John Jackery, Jim Perkinson, who's one of our co-hosts tonight, Richard Reeves, and Ruby Woods, who is also on the line. Just a brief moment I'll take to introduce myself, and then I'll let Jim come back and introduce himself. So my name is Sonia Ponce. I am a Detroit native and a local poet. And I think that's probably what's important about me. So that's, I'll just leave it there. And should I read my poems now, Jim, or do you want to introduce yourself first?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Well, since our esteemed poet tonight is Charles Gervin, who has a poem in Abandoned Automobile. As I was reading his work, I was very, I guess, honored to know that I was only a couple of or several pages from him. So I'm going to read a piece of mine that also appears in Abandoned Automobile. This is a piece called Detroit Poem Part 1. And it's a fairly old poem. And as I was reading this, it occurred to me, I need to get to writing Part 2 because Detroit has changed significantly since Abandoned Automobile. But I'll share this with you, and hopefully you can reminisce about some of the old Detroit. And I will warn you, it's got some good things in it and some kind of sad things in it too. But it's a Detroit poem. So Detroit Poem Part 1. I am sidewalks where children play jacks and cracks that break your mother's back. I am Faygo Red Pop days, better made nights, and the wondrous bread of life. I am your brand new Cherokee parked out front minus radio and tires, sitting on blocks. I am dragon green with malice, soldering lives together, and the stench of life urinated in downtown alleyways. I am your mother. I am the garbage that your old schoolmates eat. I am coal under pressure, becoming diamond cutting rock. I am cracked ground, steaming with anger for the blood I've been forced to swallow. I am the folding chairs of storefront churches that have been packed 1,000 times, and the salt of tears that mourn Edgewater Park. I am buildings gutted, a testament to human strength, standing. I am the groping fingers of teenagers searching for island pleasure, and the calloused line workers' hands driving on the river of life. I am your father. I am Southern thoughts of freedom and work blazing a path to the river's edge. I am high time Paris fashion crippled by Dutch elm disease. I am the glide in your slide that says you must be wearing gaiter and your hair's got to be laid. I am broken spirit battered womb tea sipped with semen crackers in corridor cafes. I am the womb around which pylons gather, the archway to many places, and the packaged perfume of blue collar sweat. I am your children. I am the blue light rhythm of 100-ton press. I am the driveway where your mother was killed for the $3.75 she had in her purse. I am festivals of 1,000 faces that make the body dance, and the belt that disciplines noosed tight round a junkie's arm. I am dandelions breaking concrete, a flower whose nature is to bloom. I am amoeba symbiont, absorbing everything in my path. I am a black man's raised fist, displayed horizontal, but still a fist. I am your mother. I am your children. I am your city. I am your soul. And the second piece that I wanted to read, um, this past year, this Horizons in Poetry project kind of focused on Broadside and Lotus Press. And so I was picking up, as I was looking through what I wanted to read, picked up an anthology that I had a piece in several years ago, and was pleasantly reminded when I turned to my piece here that the poem on the opposite page was a poem by Naomi Long Magic. And so I was like, oh, I'm next to Naomi. So this is another Detroit poem, City from the 22nd Floor. Under veiled and jagged moonbeams, city lights sparkle like diamond dust sprinkled by a flick of Latimer's wrist. Old streets hug communities like jeans on some hips, or a mother holding child, or a dog chewing a bone. Sleeping as you are, a child worn from play, easily you are angel. I blow you kisses and bless your soul. Tonight, I'll sleep with you, and tomorrow I will wear you like an old winter coat, familiar and warm. Thank you. Thank you so much for that opportunity. And I'm going to turn things over now. We get to hear from the fabulous Jim Perkinson.
Oh, thank you, Sonia. Yeah, I got to follow that. I should just mumble a couple things and turn it over to our feature. But I'll share a few things. I'm a 35 plus year East Side Detroit resident, tampered with by all of that exposure as a white male immersed in Detroit's inner city culture. And some of the way that tampering came out in me starting in the late 90s when I met Ron, or even before then really, is in the form of spoken word poetry. And as Sonia said, that's probably enough said. So I'll open with a piece that I read for Earth Day for a celebration commemoration last year, since we just came through that again yesterday. It's just called Earth Day. Earth Day with our head in the sand, land mines in concert with sky bombs, plastic in the faucet, acid in the ocean, and yet the sun crests high. The rains weep promise. The seeds grow roses and green poses. And Anishinaabe blood yet stokes the basin with coping and sturgeon, with birch rope and land return insistence and wise presence as wind-free and water-loving as Manuman waving towards an unseen future. And way back behind the white devil bargain, Kaliak still blesses Bridget, and Cuchulainn still sows his body in the soil like an oak-etched Ogham script announcing spring, while here, in this Michigami land of haunting, we barely dare breathe the memory, but know the earth knows, far beyond our ken, beyond our Paleolithic coming or our late and now likely going, that the mystery, the bang launched 30 eons in stretching towards 10 trillion galaxies and counting, has 5 times before reconceived the planet like a fetus and flowered in eye-scorching blossom. And so we dig and cover and water and say, rise, rise again. No matter our failing, rise. Like a seed was a universe, and a root, a genesis, and the earth, a mother, as indeed she has ever been. All right, and another one for my Earth, my partner, my Filipino wife of 20 years, who introduced me into a whole new pilgrimage across cultural difference that I'm still learning. And so this is simply called My Heart. Huddled against the February vortex, face to face like two minks in a den, I see your scars in your eyes and know the throb at the edge of your lip. You grace the cut with maturity, allowing the price to be paid, and I writhe within, carrying what has no blue thread of honor. I lay like a rock, crumbling with years, without word for the matrix of tears and hope and slow roasted resolve. Once more, watching a goddess of no name submit to your heart twist of courage as you climb the day with wise gaze into the blaze of unanswered sorrow. The white bird of noon hovering, cold, the heron of night no longer crying, the loon, the bear, the salmon silent like a paddle without a canoe. All of it written across your brow, and you so quiet in your little woman choices. I watch day by day the mantra of your walk, knowing even these words suspect, pained with witness. And I learn from your loins that what no skin power can teach, you, just one, a woman, a horizon, a sky stretch of unrelieved living, a summons to the depth of grandeur, the simply ordinary humor, the weaving hand of destiny working through your hand and that hand in mine. And though the touch of your breath is an inch from my face, the sear of your beauty is as large and small as the sun, unfathomable in its daily rise and fall. My day, my night, my star, my heat. I know you and will never be done knowing you, though this journey should root like a sycamore sheltering a child forever. All right, and maybe one more, though. Sonia, you bailed so quickly. I'd want to invite you back in too. We got a little bit of time, but I'll do one more and then we'll see if you want to climb on.
Okay. All right. All right.
So one of the things I've been doing since COVID hit is I attend a little activist church, St. Peter's at Trumbull in Michigan, and been doing a poem writing a new poem almost every week, riffing on the scripture and taking it in some of the crazy directions my mind goes. So I'm going to read one of those from last summer. It was in response to Amos being given a vision of a plumb line, the sign of empire. It's called Plumb Line, Amos 7. Amos with the plumb line, not passing over. Embridge with a pipeline, still passing under. Duggan with a hook line, not passing muster. Bottom line of bankers plundering the people. Measure, count, and cut. Green light blink. Border in the straight. Wall deciding fate. Empire on the hunt, looking for the take. Hand in the pocket, pulling out the rabbit. Handcuff on the wrist, locking down the colors. Drilling for anointing, worshiping the wheel, even if it's solar or towering windmill. Birds pay the price, mines rape the crust, Arctic burning wild, coasts flush with waves, Seattle boasting cans, Big Apple fighting seas, even where the river bends, we're paying Noah's fee. white turds in sewer lines, ruling underground, Biden pushing bombs, right pushing guns, court striking laws, women fighting bans, Q stewing lies, parade goers dying, red states high-fiving, Trumpers conniving, sky itself is roiling, seasons in revolt, virus mutating, shouting, full halt. But we keep rolling, can't stop the flight. Lifestyle addiction, churning out extinction. Officials, as at Bethel, wave away the omen, yelling at the Asians, back where you came from. Prison for the brown, graves for the black, women either kneeling or lying on their back. So we turn to the text, seeking consolation, hoping for a word that will grant us exception. But what do we find? Amos pirouetting, just fine with his figs, got wool for the winter, milk for the belly, but the plumb line still drops. The city still takes, the gun still shoots, the empire still loots, the news still fakes. So what indeed shall we do? Not sure what to say. Maybe gather figs, maybe gather hay, learn how to pray, seek a new way. How will we play? We will have to pay, and maybe that is the recourse. Stand, face the day, and be okay anyway, just like the sun and the trees and everything else still growing from the clay. After all, the earth was here way, way, way before plumb lines, and is still okay, at least so far.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I don't feel worthy to follow, but
I had to do that with you.
I know. You know, it's so interesting. I was listening to the piece that you wrote about your wife, and I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful love poem. Yeah, I was searching frantically to see if I could find something. There's a piece that I wanted to read, but I can't find it, so I'm going to settle on something else. And this is actually, you know what? Let me see. There is another love poem that I might have in here. Okay, so this is a different kind of love poem. So I think I've shared with you guys that I am working on a series of poems about the life of Henrietta Lacks. And they're mostly persona poems I'm writing. So I'm writing in the voice of the people around her. And this poem is called Love at First Sight. And it is in the voice of Dr. Howard Jones, who is the first doctor to have taken a piece of the cancerous tumor from her cervix. And so, like I said, it's a different kind of love, but it is a love poem nonetheless. So Love at First Sight, Dr. Howard Jones. Am I first a man or a scientist? The underlying question is, how did we, you and I, come to be? Or rather, will the results of my inquiry be forever tied to your bones? What of the implications of arrows and eros? So what if we did not meet across a crowded room? So what if we just stand at other end of a microscope, a jeweler's loop, me in my white coat, you full of purple majesty? If this love is double blind, what do we carry and study of one another? What is there left to say? But this is no mere Petri affair. So, that's it. I got a lot of work to do, but that's thus far.
Yeah, that last line. Whoa.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm.
So one of the things in your piece I that caught my ear was you referred to your wife as a number of metaphors, but one of them that you referred to her as your horizon. And I thought, oh, how fitting, since this is we're looking at Ron Allen and his Horizons in Poetry project, right? Because last year, right, we lifted up Broadside Press and we presented or we featured 3 recipients of the prestigious Naomi Long Madgett Poetry Award, right? We had Dr. Sandra Staten Tyroo, Jackie's Armstrong, and Malika Favorite. We also had a couple of Horizons in Poetry veterans. We had Flint Poet Laureate Samaj Brown, and we had Detroit Ether Blue. And this year, for 2023, we are going to feature more writers who were published in Hipology, Horizons in Poetry, which was the 1990 anthology edited by Ron Allen and Stella Cruz. It was published by Broadside Press. And I have moved and haven't unpacked everything. So I was frantically running around the house trying to find my copy of Hipology, and I couldn't. So I'm looking forward to hearing the poets from Hipology throughout this year.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to our feature. Charles Gervin is a native Detroiter, currently residing in Washington, D.C. He's a Horizons in Poetry veteran. He is a semi-retired consumer health care advocate who has worked for non-governmental agencies funded by the Detroit Health Department, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the District of Columbia Department of Behavioral Health, and the National Institutes of Health. So he should be a healthy guy. He is a former editor of Wayne State Literary Journal, a founding member of Trobar Alternative Art Space, and a member of the performance troupe Malcolm Agogo. His poetry has appeared in Abandoned Automobile, an anthology of Detroit poetry, Hipology, as we just heard, Horizons in Poetry, and in national publications such as the James White Review. Charles is also a former editor of the Metro Times Summer Literary Edition. So, Charles, take us away to another universe.
Well, thank you all for being here. It's also good to see some faces I haven't seen in many years. Hi, Debbie and Rebecca. Hello. Well, when I was looking for trying to decide what to read, I came across a manuscript that I haven't seen in maybe about 20 years. And I put it together right after I left Detroit. And so in this manuscript are poems that I developed or wrote in Detroit almost 50 years ago. The poems were written between 1983 and 1993. So it's fitting that I should share those. This is Horizons in Poetry, and that they should be poems about Detroit, something we can all claim an experience with. I consider myself a native Washingtonian right now, but my origins, my roots, my soul sings in Detroit. So I'd like to share some of that with you. As I said, some of these things are 50 years old. The first one is called Flying Above Detroit. His mouth set. Hey, you can take it any way you want. Instead of going down, I went up and up and up to where the snarling alleys, now rivulets below, blossomed beyond the tracks into broad, tree-lined boulevards that gave out. Up, up, and still further up. What does it matter now from where I sit? I, who claim his words literally, and I, who claim this sky of clarity, this lake of lore.
Mm.
One of the interesting things about discovering something like this is I get a chance to experience myself as I was almost 50 years ago. And during that time, I was kind of a student at Wayne. So I always had my head in a book. And if you lived in that part of town at that time, you had your head in a book, but your eyes on the street, or you weren't gonna survive. And at that time, there was a resurgence of interest in the artist, the French artist, Antoine Watteau. And so one of his paintings that this is in the 80s, it was getting a lot of attention, was a piece he called the Pilgrimage to Cythera. And this was my interpretation of that painting. That horrible summer, when the days seemed to stifle at the end of the block, and you could feel the sun beating flat against your arms and thighs. On nights, we'd strip down to our underwear and sit up in the open window with all the lights out. You could not find work, and I could not find myself, and the money was funny. We'd walk across the bridge to Belle Isle. Pardon the flipping. This poem is called A Saturday Afternoon in the Old Republic, Detroit Institute of the Art, 1988. And at the time, the DIA was running a series of commercials on television to kind of attract people down to the galleries. And one of the catchphrases was, art as you've never seen it before. So that presented many possibilities for me. And this is what I did with that. What I wanted to see was art as I've never seen it before. So I huddled real close to the one that I adore. And together we faced the long corridors, hurriedly, without looking back. We understood the guards and why it's so necessary to be quiet and to follow the tour and to not get lost among the ancient, brittle monuments in the casual shipwrecks or the howling African mask rounded by melon-ripe Madonnas dispensing God at each tit in a fit of desperation.
Boom.
And I wrote this for, the 80s, as I remember, at least the late 80s, there was a lot of craziness going on. And well, anyway, this is how I reacted at that time. And the eerie thing is, it's like the chickens in this have come home to roost. Why are the thrushes so damn good looking? Is it because they're male? Is it because they're female? Or is it because they're a little of both? They know what to do with oil. They have all the strength of their convictions, and they will lie awake all night with you safe in their arms. They believe it's all God will. Is that why they're so cruel? And they will tell you when no one else has the courage to point it out, the beauty of your soul struggling down below. I have heard, well, I've read that Northland is no more, as if it ever existed anyway. But by the time I wrote this, it had fallen into its state of decrepitude. And no one was going there anymore. And well, people began to see the utter foolishness of malls anyway. But anyway, so this one is called Ode to Northland in Southfield, above Detroit. The first shopping mall in the Americas. And I think Northland was either the first or one of the first.
The first.
The first, okay. So here it is. The poem is in 3 parts. The first part is called A Boogaloo Down Broadway, Funky Broadway. And this one, I'm trapped in the ever-extending mall on an escalator going up, 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 and up to the appliance floor where we kissed and fell in love. There are millions of color TV sets, all tuned to different channels, but speaking through one clear voice. The buzzword for passion this spring is bye, bye, bye. Longingly, we fall into each other's arms, ever after happiness in the land of surplus. Part 2, I know this girl. I kind of know this girl who knows this guy who works at this mall, and they ain't nothing but 18. And they kind of go together since they met in history last year in school. They've been kind of around each other a lot. She tells me that when she first saw him behind the counter in his get-up clerk shirt and tie with clean hands and nails, she thought, oh shit, he's for sale. And he even buys her stuff on his discount. He wants to be a good man. So when he sleeps with her, he goes, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, ain't nothing good enough for you. Desire and free trade. All day, this particular gray day after Thanksgiving, we, clutching our car coats, haunted the malls, seeing so many pale but never exact reflections or repercussions of ourselves in the chrome, on the glass, or in the rigid cheek of the mannequins, until everything, even ourselves, were reduced into a thick, numbing stupor. We ate our hot dogs and drank a gigantic cherry coke at the snack bar of a bright yellow linoleum fast food joint. Then we took to the lanes again, hoping to find something, anything. Okay. For some reason, this particular poem I felt deeply. And I think, I don't know, psychically, it was a break from what I was doing at the time. I used to write poems in series. Sometimes the series had a character, and one of the characters was a guy named Mr. Brown, who really was supposed to be an everyman. So this poem is titled Mr. Brown as Dr. Faustus at the End of Mercy. And I got to apologize for some of my illusion. At the time, I was an English major, and that's what I was studying. But Mr. Brown as Dr. Faustus at the End of Mercy. All night, Mr. Brown as Dr. Faustus read and studied hard his chart, graphs, and long glass lenses. He unfurled yet another map and recoiled once again against the same dry, sterile calculations. He leaned forward over his desk and covered his face. After having watched all the pretentious shadows of history vanish in the bright dawn of a city with dry, choked streets. Surely there must be a change, he sobbed. Something has indeed gone wrong. All righty, so. Okay. All right. Second. This is a poem Ron loved. I remember reading this for him once, and but anyway, it's again from that series. This one is called "The Demon Lover Contemplates His First Wife's Suicide," 1988. I've been off of everything for months, and isn't life wonderful? I now work out. I've given up God and meat, pills and politics, in those awful twilights when my consciousness felt like one gigantic scab constricting itself. No more sex, no more booze, no more raps at midnight, because I now have to be at work on time. No more ass on my back, no love's now lost. Everything has a sour taste. Okay, I guess I'm doing good.
Hmm?
Am I doing good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. He blinded Mr. Brown with science. My hysterical, evangelical doctor has a new poultice he wants to sell. No more is it a question of God or the puny laws of man. He thunders before packed lecture houses and as a filler on the circuit of my favorite fab talk show host. He has made a whistle of my wounds. He has taught me so many dirty little tricks, like how to be happy, how finally to be somebody, how to think positive, and how to get rich. He has baited my illness with his brand new powders and dust. He has uncovered a thirst so new to spring, I hardly know where to quit. He can have this body, God damn it, if science and history has predicted it. He can have it. Mr. Brown's daddy worked in a car factory, and his mama was a maid. I have been bruised so badly that at times my heart seemed to swell against my rib cage. Everywhere down these narrow streets, life was never enough. I've been lost so many times on my way home that I now swear all my allegiances nightly in front of the TV set. I work a drab job. I went to an all-black school in an all-black part of town. Every all-black day of my life seemed to float out windows and doors, down city blocks far beyond my grasp. Before bedtime, my mama and daddy used to gather us all in for evening prayers around a table used only for eating, holding the Holy Bible in an atlas. The whole world, Africa, Asia, Europe, in the Americas, huge green masses adrift in a recycled textbook. Detroit with the faint monocle upside down, or the end of the demon lover. In the room, the gauze curtains are billowing as if the great Hitchcock had transposed them into one of his all too dark cinematic epics, signifying the start of perhaps another half-ass surrealistic dream sequence improvised by the much overrated Dali or the passage of time. Even the stars are shining so perfect that they don't appear to be real. You've seen them before, much too often. But when you see this sky, you know it is the once in the lifetime of a bright new star. Fate indeed has been altered. Tears roll down your beastly chest. Thank you.
Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh,
Awesome.
yeah.
I'm sitting here just like wanting more.
Mhm.
That was just amazing, and just very moving. You took us a lot of different places. I see a lot of history in your work. We've got some questions that we're going to be bringing up in just a moment, but before that, I want to just remind the audience that we have an opportunity for an open mic afterwards. So if you're interested in reading, please put your name in the chat. Start your comment with open, and we'll get you on the list for the open mic piece of this. But oh my gosh, I just first of all, let's just give a round of applause. If you want to snap or clap or do something, or if you want to use your reactions on Zoom, do whatever. But yeah, that was just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never knew how you were going to end. Always caught by surprise, the way you would cut. And yeah, tattoo reality was such a stark realization almost every time.
I will say this, these poems are actually haunted by the space around Cobb's Corner, Wayne State University, the Cass Corridor, because they were actually composed in that physical area.
Mhm.
When I lived in that community, I lived that life. Now, there are many different levels of life along the Cass Corridor.
Yeah.
But when I say I lived that life, I went to a lot of the poetry readings, a lot of the events. It was one of the most engaging periods of my life. And it took place where I was born. I mean, I would say from 18 to about 32, my growth happened in that area, and a lot of experiences and people in that area.
There's a grittiness to your work that reminds me of Ron's work.
Oh my goodness. When I met Ron, I think I was 2022. So yeah, and now I knew Ron very well, and we were very good friends. And by the time I had left Detroit, I would say I've known Ron close to 20 years. So from, I don't know, 1978, when I met him at Wardell's apartment in the Cass Corridor, up into the early 90s. So I also saw someone go through many different changes. And that kind of there is an urban grittiness, in part of it's due to him. You know, the other part is there's also a bookworm part of it. One of the most powerful experiences of my life was as a 7-year-old child walking in, you know, with a name tag on, being led with a troop of children into the galleries at the DIA. And at 7 years, huh?
Is that where you saw the Watteau?
No, that's not in our collection. But what I saw on the wall was a study by John Singleton Copley. It was a study called, at the time, they may have changed the name, but it was labeled Head of a Negro. Now, what's powerful about that, that was a study for a larger painting called Watson and the Shark. Now, in the 18th century, historical painting was seen as the ultimate. And when historical paintings were done, they tend to mimic certain classical poses. In Watson and the Shark, there's an African-American figure. This guy, the subject of Watson and the Shark, eventually became a Lord Mayor of London. And the painting was painted 20 years later. So Copley's study, which is, I mean, a beautiful painting and not clouded with any of the racism that later was part of how Black people have been portrayed by white people. But his painting is the only actual real figure, because he had to paint the Black person from life. He couldn't count on the classical figures that was part of the painting. And so, but I learned that later. But it was just that real connection that was like a beginning for me, an exploration of myself in art and in poetry. And I see poetry, and this might be crazy, like I see paintings and other things.
Yeah, because you have a lot of references to paintings and other art forms in your work, even other works of literature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't believe somebody would learn grittiness from Ron Allen. I mean, yeah, Cobb's Corner and that neighborhood and channeling the rich, deep contradictions.
Well, you know, one of the most powerful images that kind of stays in my mind. At the time I lived in the corridor, it was, well, most of that part of Detroit was seen as abandoned. I've been back since, and it's not abandoned anymore. But some of the barriers the access, I guess, for many of us were greater. There was greater access, I believe, than there is now.
Yep.
You know, the world has changed, but I don't know. You felt free in walking into those spaces and really getting in touch with those things. But you know, you didn't have to. There wasn't, you know, all of the stuff that's down there now. I mean, I've been through there. The last time I was down there was October. And, you know, it's just doesn't feel like, and it shouldn't. I mean, I don't want to, you know, say where it's going is bad. I'm not saying that, but the experience I've had there is gone, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
Times change and people move on, but just that we had greater access to that experience.
So where are because you a lot of your work is written about, although you've got these artistic references, it's also rooted in your you know, where you find yourself, right? Where you're living and what's going on around you, right? And so what has captured your attention more recently? Like, what are you working on now? Because yeah, you mentioned how things have changed, and so I'm wondering, you know, is your work changing? Is it becoming more gritty? Is it becoming less gritty? How are you?
Well, I think today it's more. I think it's more engaged with mood and less the sense of the outside world, which I you know, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But one thing that I will know that's different from then and now is that at least then, I don't, things seemed more contained, you know. There were, I would say I knew less of myself, so more of the outside world was reflected in what I wrote about. You know, I was a real bookish kid who great grandfather who was a slave was a prominent minister, and so brought up by my mother. So I mean, as gritty as a lot of the stuff sounds, this person 50 years ago was much more innocent than the person talking to you today. So could feel things, would share intense feelings, probably more so than I would today.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So while we're having this conversation, just a reminder to our participants to sign up for the open mic. We're scheduled to begin that in about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll return to have some more conversation with Charles after that. Right at the moment, we have 2 people signed up. So please feel free to kick in with some of your words and your own creativity.
Absolutely, absolutely. Poets are always in conversation with one another with their poems. So just so that you can be on deck and know that you're going to be called upon. Looks like Deborah Hochberg, you're going to be our first
Hey, Debbie.
reader. And will be our second open mic reader.
Kim Hunter signed up first, then Deborah.
Okay.
Missed that. All right.
Yeah, Kim signed first, Deborah, and then myself.
Yeah.
But there may be some others
Okay.
who want to come along.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah, I see Kim. Okay.
Yeah. So while we've got just a couple of minutes before we start that open mic piece of it, Charles, I just have one more question, and I don't see a question here in the chat. If you have a question for Charles, please put that in the chat as well. But in lieu of that, I just have a quick question. Since there's so much art in your work, I'm curious, do you have a favorite painting or piece of work? Do you have a favorite piece of artwork that you return to, or no?
Well, when you said that, my mind just went, ah! You know, if I pick one baby, it seems like I have to kill all the others. So no. Well, there are so much just exciting stuff happening. I mean, today, the last couple of days, I spent a lot of time with this South African. She creates, I guess, tapestries or wall hangings. Billy Zinga, just these wonderful things in silk. But you know, tomorrow I may be obsessed with someone else. But right now, she's the flavor.
Okay, Billy Zinga, we'll have to check her out. We'll have to look her up. Jim, you want to bring up the first open mic reader?
Yeah, so Kim Hunter, and let me see, how do I unmute you? I can't.
I think he can unmute himself.
I got it, Jim. I got it.
Okay, you got it? Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Mike is not.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Hang on one second. First of all, Charles, that was incredible. And it was really great to see you after so many years. And I don't know
me
if
too.
I don't know if you remember being on the radio, but you were on the show with me years ago, and you read one of those poems. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It'll come to me. It'll come back to me later. But so I'm just gonna not take up a lot of time. This is a relatively new poem, and it's called "What I Hate About Love." What I hate about love: it shows up more on screen than in flesh. Dollar store laxatives in theatrical popcorn give the illusion of emptiness that can only be filled with multiverse computer demons swallowing their own tails in stereo on screens that claim to be your mother, father, the dog, the lost dog you never had. Capsule movie reviews tattooed on digital retinas insist it was a communal experience, alone in the darkness of the public-private home entertainment catacomb, but omit the sequels and prequels of temporary lobotomy. If only you had taken the advice of your bartender, who used to be a psychiatrist before she was a bookie, who earned enough to pay the losers. And after they'd had a few drinks, she'd school them in statistics until they swore off betting and organized their neighbors into cadre, out in the open, away from the glare of doom scroll and virtual virality. Her purple-haired students, her multicolored loved ones, her multi-gendered comrades swarm the headquarters, cross the moat, occupy the temple of moneylenders, where you just got a job training people how to be trained. But maybe in the spit and sweat of the crowd that knows it is a hydra, an organism, there is a chance for something more glorious and ignobly human than anyone has ever feared. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Kim Hunter. So you have any more that you would like to share? Yeah, go ahead with another.
Need
I'm
to-
sorry, Kim, I have to figure out how to unmute you. You muted yourself, and now that you're spotlighted, give me just a second here. I might have to remove your spotlight and then find you again. I apologize. There we go. I'm sending you the unmute now.
Not
Are you
yet.
getting the request to unmute? There we go.
Okay, all right, now, this will be my last one because I don't want to take up too much time. This is called the Come and Go Lounge. Two skeletons complete with nervous nerves and organic organs emerge from outside the Come and Go Lounge near the crossroads, puzzled and happy to speak through their bones before they lay down in the hope of flesh yet to be, and those that led them to this place, named and renamed until painted layers peel with a kind of music in the marrow, soundtrack to the question, whatever happened on the cave wall, under the glow of the fireworks turned rocket, on the corpse-strewn field of weapons as the model for hell, in towers of towers for towers' sake. A worrisome parade of occurrences it was, and stuff as we look for ourselves and other skeletons across the way. Look for that common currency, love with no value but love, with organs failed or missing, limbs and function erased in time, on the corner of the mountain and the vacant lot, intersection of the alley and swollen river, where forest overgrows the brand new parking structure. We stop for lunch to call and respond. Do you come here often? Only to empty my soul and make way for the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. All right. So, Deborah, want to kick in? Do you dare to follow Kim?
Okay, hello. Just want to say, Charles, it's so great to see you again.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, and I think my time in the Cass corridor overlapped with the time you were living there, and your work really evoked that time period for me. So I have a poem here. The Lawrence Street Gallery in Ferndale has a photography exhibit, and they invited people to write poems inspired by one of the photographs. So I ended up writing this poem. It's based on a photograph called Fishing on the Detroit River. The photo was is by Lori Kopak. And so the poem has the same title, Fishing on the Detroit River. It is said, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I was a boy when my father first brought me to the river to teach me how to fish. The river where rum runners plied their trade during the dry years of prohibition, and where people longing for deliverance crossed over to find freedom. Encircled by this inlet, under a canopy of cottonwood leaves, there is only sky and water, and a man can stand on his own 2 feet, water lapping at his knees, and fish, and find peace and serenity. While in the distance, a freighter, Leviathan of the Straits, en route with its cargo to some distant port, quietly sails on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. That was really nice. Yeah, all these place and period poems tonight. That seems to be our theme. Well, let's see if we're going to keep with that theme or if we're going to do something a little different. We're going to bring up Ruby Woods and see what she's going to add to the poetic conversation.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is say, Nancy and Diane, why aren't you in the open mic? Just calling people out. I am definitely going to take it in a different direction. And I decided earlier to do this. I have only written 2 poems that are political. And the first one was in 2000. I have been dreaming. I have been dreaming of taking the president out of the ruse of benevolent liberator, out of the nationalistic fervor that condones aggression, abuse, and greed in the name of freedom, out of the spirit of elitism that allows some to glory in heinous and inhumane treatment of those they deem other, out of the classroom where the primary colors are now red, white, and blue, out of the textbooks of revisionist history, out of the media broadcasting mandates of the powerful and wealthy, out of the war machine well oiled by the blood of our sons and daughters, out of the petrochemical megalith that rapes the earth and hoards natural resources, out of the prayers of Christian conservatives whose God is exclusive, prejudicial, amoral, and vengeful, out of our ubiquitous computer monitors emitting subliminal messages and directives, out of the theater of war and back on the ranch, out of the broken hearts of families and loved ones left behind, out of the mouths of venal politicians who sacrifice little compared to the lives impacted by their words, out of the ears of the low information citizenry, out of the myth of racial, religious, economic, and gender equality, out of the universities staffed with right-wing professors and stilted curricula, out of the moans and screams of human beings starving to death, out of our sacred intimacies, out of the wombs of women, out of Iraq, out of Afghanistan, out of the shelter of his father's CIA, out of the role of savior of democracy, out of the cloak of doublespeak and thievery, out of the White House, out of politics. Yes, I have been dreaming of taking the president out.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
for one of two political poems, that packs a punch.
Well, this other one is a political love poem. I was very proudly a mama for Obama, and I wrote this probably during the middle of his second term. Ode to a sitting president. Across the middle passage, across the abysmal wound, cut and recut by slave ship after slave ship after slave ship, a gaping hole festering. The separation hangs, centuries of brine, eternal waves, and oceanic currents have not cleansed the purulence. A myriad of ghosts singing, haunting the waters, singing, an ancient choral witness, ceaseless in their moans, calling forth the one, tireless in the knowing that all things come aright. The healing is not swift. He had to come out of Africa, out of America, reared on Hawaiian soil, nurtured in Indonesian mud holes, chasing lizards and chickens. He learned to speak English, Indonesian, Hawaiian, Luo. He learned to speak his heart. He learned right from wrong. Black, white, and brown people in his world shaped his world, his sensibilities, and his measure of justice. He won the hearts of Americans. He won the hearts of the world, from Africa to Asia, from Europe to Australia to the Middle East and beyond. The entire global community and legions of ancestors voted. The earth laughed and wept, united in hopeful jubilation. He must have known it would not be easy. He must have known it would get ugly. He must have known they would get nasty, vicious, and rude. He must have known it would be tragic. Oh, to step into the crucible, the cauldron of sacrifice, to accept the call. Centuries of wrongs and abuses mired in the balance. We witnessed the transfiguration. We cannot take his cup. The unspeakable pain draws gaunt lines across his face. The healing is protracted. He, the reluctant Buddha, endures. He is the blessed one who leans toward goodness.
Hmm. Yes, yes. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes,
Well,
that
There's
one
any,
some,
deserves a name.
there's some
Yeah,
other poets in the house.
yeah,
yes.
we've got a couple more that have signed up. I was going
Oh,
to say that poem.
excellent.
Yeah, that poem needed a moment of silence behind it, though. That poem was weighty. It just needed a moment. But yeah, we see that Miss Diane Jackson has agreed to grace us with a poem. So Diane, you are up next.
Hello. I think this is a poem. Anyway, my first trip to Africa, I wrote a poem. I went to Ghana, and this was in 1996. And the poem is called Aquaba, Welcome Home. My feet touched the rich red soil of the motherland, and I felt the embrace, an ancient grip. The warm, sweet kiss of the wind circled my body, and I felt the embrace, familiar, gentle caress. The call and scent of the ocean awakened something deep inside of me, and I felt the embrace, a lost memory. My eyes met the deep, dark, intense eyes of my brothers and sisters of this land, and I felt the embrace. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister, was the song. I welcomed the stillness and peace of my spirit as I stood on this land, my home in the center of the universe. Dance, dance, dance with the spirits of the ancestors. Connect, connect, connect to your source. I felt the embrace. Fellowshipped with my family, fell to my knees and wept in the slave dungeons, stood in the door of no return and remembered. I felt the embrace, connected to a mighty force. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister, was the song. No more emptiness. The connection had been made. The yearning fulfilled. Questions answered. Pain experienced. Loneliness understood. Memory sustained. Message forever eternal. Hope renewed. Love endured. Thankful. Touched by the spirit of the ancestors. Returned home. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister. Welcome home, my sister, was the song.
That was just fabulous. Just fabulous, Diane. Thank you so much. It reminded me when you said you had said that was your first trip to the continent and it was in 96. I was like, my first trip to the continent was in 96 and I went to Ghana as well. And I have a poem called Aquaba as well.
Wonderful.
Yes. And so I was flipping here through my book. I want to, let me see if there's another person who has put their name in the open mic before I read this. If not, if you guys would indulge me, I'm going to share my Aquaba.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This one is called Aquaba, the welcome. Old woman pounding Banku, skin wrinkled and thin, hiding sinewy triceps, responding to the beat of the stick. old man with skin drawn taut, shiny, smooth, supple. This place welcomes me with gap-toothed smiles, waving hands, and familial hugs. This place welcomes me with gay-laid heads and baskets of sugarcane. This place welcomes me with babies tied to backs in the colors of kings. This place welcomes me, and for the first time in a long time, I open myself and breathe. Yeah, it's just a magical place, just a magical place.
Yes.
There's nothing like being home.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've got about 29 minutes left, and I don't see another person on the open mic list. So if anybody would like to read a second poem, please go ahead and put your name. Oh, we have somebody here.
Yeah.
All right. Peer pressure, right?
I can't get out from under the pressure of Ruby.
All right. Well, Nancy Owen Nelson, you have the stage.
This is a scary one for me. You probably may not remember last year I read something about Africa Town and the Clotilda, and the book came out, and my book was a struggle for me to find a way to voice and help and do something about or speak to the dark history of my home state of Alabama, to which I am moving in about a month. And so I wanted this poem speaks to how I've struggled with this issue. So it's not about Detroit. That's one reason I hesitated to offer anything. But let me tell you quickly that the Desert Island Supply Company in Birmingham, Alabama is a place kind of like Inside Out, where children come in and do artwork, and they've been brought in from schools in the area where they haven't had an opportunity, as my understanding, to flourish as artists and to flourish with their expression. So this is where I went to read in 2019, and it's an ode to Desert Island Supply Company, Birmingham, Alabama. You'll see a change, a shift in the poem in the end. I want to write an ode to this place, to this night, where I enter a scene of color, walls adorned with maps of exotic places where children's minds catch sight of worlds beyond them, where they may yet walk in exploration of richer, fairer times when no one will tell them they have no chance. Where on the wall hangs shirts with the words, "I dwell in possibility." But I cannot write an ode. An ode is a love poem to a place, and while I love this place, I am not ready for it. And perhaps it's not ready for me. Not until I stand on stage, ocean mural behind, red octopus floating high, black eyes watching me as I stand to read. And only then, when I utter words of anguish from another, a man abused by whites in Detroit's fiery streets, only then can I understand how I am not able to utter, much less imagine, his pain. How instead I bring pain to those I want to love. Here instead, in this place, this historic building where Masons once met and children now create their souls and voices free to do what they could not do before. Their poems were cast aside. How instead I can only do what I must by my genes, my body, and my life. I can listen, I can honor, and then I can indeed speak. thank you for that opportunity. I don't know if I've read that one yet out loud, so.
Thank you. Thank you. So you're going to be moving back to Alabama, to the
I am.
Birmingham area?
Actually, North Alabama, it's supposed to be the bluest, what is it? A blue
blue
dot
corner?
state. Yeah, and there's a lot of good art and creativity there, and people who care about the things I care about. So
Okay.
I'm hopeful, but it is, it's going to be a big deal. So
Absolutely. But if you're moving there next month,
mhm.
you will be down there when they open the Welcome Center for the Clotilda. I don't know
Oh,
if
yes,
you knew that.
Oh, I didn't know when
Yes.
it was, but have you seen Descendant? Have you
I
seen?
have.
Oh my God.
The movie, and I
And
happen to
felt,
be.
I felt such a strength of such energy from, I'm trying to think, Cujo Lewis.
Mhm.
That was when we were there. I don't want to take too much time, but this book is about starting at Africa Town and going up through the state to various places that I had been, and also to the civil rights museums, and revisiting some places that I hadn't seen with those eyes before. So thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
I'll be getting there.
Yeah, and I will have to get a copy of your book.
Oh, well, that was nice. That would be a nice outcome.
Absolutely.
And Ruby, maybe you want to tell them about next month and about our Vespers, because you're going to be the featured person for this project.
Well, in May, I will be reading at the UU Detroit Vespers event, and I'm going to read Ron Allen. And I did it before. This was before. It was in one of those years when we were like throwing out the pitches and getting nothing, But I did a Vespers session reading Ron's work, and I'm going to do that again. So I'll use selections from his spoken word CDs and read his words. And so if you're interested in that, of course, I usually push things out about those types of things, particularly if I'm participating. So if you're on my e-list, you'll hear about it. It's going to be May 25th, and it's from 7 to 8, just a 1 hour piece.
And Nancy just put a link to that in the chat box also, if anybody's interested.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, and because I love this program, and we're getting poets. In fact, after Dr. Sandra was here last year, we got her for Vespers. And that was awesome. And I would hope check that out and come see us. I'm actually doing this book this Thursday night, the book that I mentioned, but also I'd love to have you on our email list, because I'm going to go on with it after I move. So thanks so much for the opportunity, Ruby, and all you do, and for this group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have time for one more poem?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'd like to read a poem by Alan Atkins, who was an old friend of mine, and I think one of the great poets from our era. This one is called Tina Cleanser. So you know the world on Woodward, and you know all the tricks of bringing forth gushes of desire. But what do you know of the world outside of this cold Midwestern burg? What do you know of all the struggles for power of a collapsing economy, of the brink of Holocaust we're dancing on? What do you know of multivac, of man's greatest and worst creation, manufactured to protect man from against himself? But there's no defense against Motivac. You are in the heart of Motivac, deep in the bowels of the earth. You are the heartbeat of Motivac, monstrous circuits opening and closing as multivac sucks at Earth's molten energies. Cybernetic laughter echoes around. Come, meet the great Ajax, commands the cold voice in the machine. Mechanical voice, you step up to the dais, but you see no Greek hero, only white powder. Here lies Ajax, hero of Troy, mindlessly serving the housewives of America, as shall you. You feel your consciousness flee from your body. You're imprisoned in the circuits of multivac, along with the other hapless victims snatched from space-time. With horror, you witness your pretty brown body crumbling, reduced to a fine white powder. Somewhere in America, a young housewife feels a strange desire lapping at her as she scrubs the bathtub.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
That
So
was
there-
Alan Atkins.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. There are places where you think you might want to laugh, but you've got there's such a weightiness to the words. You're like, oh, maybe that's not. I guess I'm thinking about using Ajax and this cleanser, and as a kid, that's what we cleaned the bathroom with. Actually, it's as as an adult, it's still what I clean my bathroom with now. And so I'm thinking about that as you're going through the pieces. Yeah, interesting.
My wife has a poster on the wall going from our second floor down to the living room that's well known in the Philippines, of Uncle Sam with a Filipino held by the hair being dunked in water and a scrub brush. And it's advertising for, one of the cleansers and so your poem immediately invokes that little icon on our wall.
That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the history of the Philippines.
Yep.
It was something that America thought they had to have. It was the horrible age of imperialism. They slaughtered tons of Filipinos, threw them in.
Half a million to a million.
Yeah, just an awful slaughter. Yeah.
Oh, that's just terrible. That's just terrible.
Uh,
It's so interesting that we talk about how the reader or how the listener brings their experience to the poem, right? And so you mentioned the word Ajax, and I have certain images, and and Jim has totally different images associated with that term.
That was a particular technique of Alan's, the bringing the whole thing about myths, history, and then what was happening. I also think that the white powder he's also referring to is also cocaine.
Cocaine, yeah.
Well,
Nancy reminded me that this Sunday at the UU Detroit Church, there is going to be a performance sermon. And Nancy, you have to remind me of the two gentlemen, but they're going to do something called the Inward Duet. It's a work in progress.
Right. Alexander Morgan and Dwight Stackhouse, or Skip. Yeah. You may know Skip.
And that will happen during the 11 to noon.
Actually, it's going to be at 1 o'clock. It's going to be after.
Oh, it will be after. Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
people can come.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's better, because I was thinking, how are they gonna?
yeah, right. And it's very powerful. And Alex is white and comes from Confederate, Southern background, and Dwight is Black and comes out of a Detroit neighborhood, and they're dialoguing about how they were innocent of racism, and the experiences that they had. So it's very, very powerful. And I'm looking for the flyer, and I don't know if I can find it, but everybody's welcome. There's no charge. So,
Charles, I wanted to ask, just as sort of poet to poet, I'm always curious, how do you birth a poem? Does it interrupt you? Does it begin as a hunch, thought, begin outside you?
Well, the most successful poems actually begin with sounds. And I it's so odd. For me, it begins with sound, and sounds attach themselves to images. And it's a kind of kinetic thing, like I can feel certain words in my body.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm most successful, I can bring that experience. You can almost see and hear certain things and feel them. So that's. Yeah, but basically the most successful things, no matter what sense goes into the poem, for me, the most successful of my things are things that have sound to them, I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
No, it does to me, although it's different than what happened for me was as somebody who's a professor teaching and trying to be clear and pithy and dramatic with students in the classroom. What I learned from Ron was to let a different part of my brain have sway in the poetic moment, and the language sonically runs away with me. So it's no longer convening meaning. It is about a running sound that once it gets going in me, I have no idea where it's going. But the rhythmic structures and the breaks in the rhythm are what command what happens. And that sounds a little different than the way you're talking about sound.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about Ron, Ron had often had a lot of struggles with kind of like getting to know how his mind works. And how it was different. I mean, well, everybody's mind is different, but accepting his without, filter. And so some of his things are almost like a trance, images constantly evolving and flowing. And he would turn that into sound.
Yeah.
But it came at being really aware of himself and how his particular mind was working. Some of the deepest conversations I've had about, thoughts and how the mind worked actually came from Ron. Yeah. So, yeah. And also, he had a way of giving a new sense to words when they were strung together. As if the words by themselves couldn't reach where he wanted to go.
Yep.
So he had to fuse them together and they made another sense. And of course, he had a musical ear.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's jazz influence.
Yeah.
You know, working on the project it's been a deep dive, and there's so many articles that were written about Ron, and if you read those articles, he speaks so much about vibration, and he uses the term a language knot, and that's where that thick knot rhythm title comes from, when he named the theater ensemble. And then we've been getting a chance to listen to some of the former cast members and how they came to the work and were able to feel it and make it just this other language that, it's not like a linear sentencing or syntax that the average person uses, but by them embracing it wholly with a different part of their being, they were able to do his plays, and some of them did multiple Ron Allen plays because they loved it. They loved that freedom, that expression, the whole being expression.
Mhm. There was a multi-layered aspect to the work, and so the words themselves had meaning, but then the sounds of the words had a meaning, and
At a rhythm.
layering on top of one another, just like jazz, right? So you've got your various instruments in jazz, and so Ron is using the words, and he's using the sounds of the words, and he's using the ordering of the words, right? Each of those has meaning. Kim Hunter just mentioned the plays, the theater. Certainly you heard that in Ron's poetry, but because the plays are longer, right, and you've got the dialogue, right, you're then immersed truly in that rhythm, in that sound, and that vibration then is kind of going into your body.
Yeah. Ruby was saying the actors and actresses were able to do Ron Allen plays, and I think the reverse is also true. Ron Allen plays did them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jim, I really appreciated the distinction you made. Is it okay to call you Jim?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Between the way one teaches in the classroom, if you will, lectures material, and allowing that freedom of the creative price, the right brain freedom. And sometimes when you're teaching creative literature, you can go back and forth between both.
Yeah.
But it's very freeing. Yeah. I like that. Sonia, what is your last name?
My last name is Pouncy, Pouncey.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This is, since we're inevitably talking about Ron, you might have a copy of this, but I found in my basement a copy of Eye to the Ground, which I don't know if you have one of those, Ruby, a copy of that.
No.
It was a one-time newspaper that it has lots of people, me, George Tish, can't remember. Dennis, you might be in there. And it was published once because it was published during the Engler administration. They got a grant, and then the Engler administration took the money back.
It took it back.
Oh, God.
From all these arts. But I'll make a copy and get a copy, send a copy to you. I'm also going to investigate, see if I can get it made into a PDF, because it's turning yellow. The paper is turning yellow. It's from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure the 80s. No, it's from the 90s. It's from the 90s. But it's a Ron thing. It's a whole Ron extravaganza where he invited people to come in. Kofi Natambu was in it.
Oh,
Yeah. But yeah.
So you have to tell us, Kim, why was the funding given and then taken back? What?
Because Engler was an asshole.
Right.
That's basically it. I mean, he was just,
Where they
it
call
was pretty scandalous. I mean, Ron wasn't the only one affected. There were people who had done, planned the whole project. I mean, I remember having this conversation with A. Spencer Bearfield, who had, I mean, he plans big, but he plans well. He had planned all this stuff. And, they took the money back. I'd never even heard of it.
So did the project go, I mean, was the funding replaced by some other source, or did the project have to just fold? All that work.
They had to seek. Some people sought other forms of funding and support, but that was the only version of Eye to the Ground I think that ever happened.
Wow.
it's fascinating. Along with taking away the mental health care, he took away the arts.
He took away the arts. Don't get me started on England. There's a whole bunch of he was the start of the end of welfare as we know it, which just means snatching the rug out from everybody and putting people out. I was working in the Cass corridor at the time, and there were just piles and piles of people's belongings on the street, and you would see guys walking around with all of their belongings in a plastic bag because they had been thrown out of these places. I mean, they were working quote unquote illegal jobs, getting paid under the table to stay in these little no account furnished rooms. They were just making it. And then when you took away the welfare, they couldn't afford anything. They just got, hundreds just got kicked out. So anyway, that's a whole.
We can talk about how awful he is all night. Yeah.
Well, Sonia and Jim, I think we need to
Wrap things up a bit here. So yes.
All right. So thank you all for joining us. The sort of official word here is please join our Facebook page. Of course, we got to get the techno stuff in there. The Ron Allen Project, and follow us on Instagram at the Ron Allen Project, all run together, to stay up to date and keep in touch with us. You can also leave your email address in the chat and we will add you to our list. Visit the Horizons in Poetry 2022-23 YouTube page to review all the events from 2022 and then starting now 2023, and access our playlist of vintage hip and Ron Allen in Los Angeles videos. We anticipate the launch of the Ron Allen Project website shortly in coming weeks.
All right. Our next event for this year is Monday, June 26th, where we'll be featuring the fabulous work of Dennis Teichman. Dennis is a Detroit writer of many talents. In the 70s and 80s, along with Jim Wandless and Glenn Manisto, he co-founded the Detroit River Press, which was a printing cooperative that published the newsletter Straits, as well as some books by Detroit poets. Currently, he is the radio host of Dimension, a WDET FM program featuring writing and music. And along with Deborah King and Paul Schwartz, he is the co-founder and publisher of Past Tense Press. In addition to all these things, Dennis has been published in many, many anthologies and has 2 books of his own poetry, Edge to Edge and V8. This promises to be a real treat. I am looking forward to it. I know that. So I hope you all plan to be back here on June 26th as well. Back to you, Jim.
So thank you all for joining and participating this evening. Remember to view the chat for any links from our artists and co-hosts. And please note that all of our HIP events run from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ruby Woods time, Ron Allen time, Gervin time now. and can be accessed by the same link each time. This event is made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and supported by the Hannan Center, the Kayrod Gallery in Detroit. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Time and space in the city. In the street funk on the Mac, the smell of the junking junk of the human mind. Ground Zero television heroes, Bailout Cruise and death in my pen. Flag waving thunder, Babylon slumber. The time and space city, working the money pimp computer slave. New mind stomp of circumstance and pomp. And death is video glass and corporate rap. Baggy head winning superstars on deep ribbing trips of ego. And time and space of the city crawls from my tongue like Friday night dressed in hero chic drag. As the chisels beat of soul and sleep, conch fried sweet. In labor's price jail, in prison perpetrating schemes and doo-doo dreams of beauty. In time and space in Detroit is their mega mind. Backspace is ground zero. Greyhound escapes. And fake shake death and illusory wealth. And the HMO is dope, smoke, taupe, factory hope. Stereo blues in Center City. And the wicked are celebrated. Resuscitated shells watch we die in the living lifetime. They space change are funky, junky ships. And we blow rips of walls and winners and movie renters. For miles in the sky and the sweet flag goodbye. And we become the gun of time and space. And neon freaks in the deep fix of channel hip. We are again exploded and eroded youth decay. And money won't speak. And time won't creep. We fall into the deep sleep of yes. An affirmation of impotent masturbation. Looking for the good in canned reality time. And we space in the limits of man. And think of cesspool Sundays. We only see the paper heads, paper worlds, the DNA. The space won't speak and time won't creep. And we scream at the glitter of time. Paraded as life. Real as asphalt. Real as industry. Real as death. Two-legged money machine and the speak of doom. Pimped out cartoon war zones between the mind of God and plastic knives. And the rope genius of man. Spitting techno plans. The secret ritual futures of slave work and flesh. And the hype of sex. And the hype of speed, proto-cerebral greed. And the time and space in Spirit City is in the gate of the mouth and hustled bouts. And her head is on their rack for skin. City Hall Mall, only a hat of the freed to see seeds of the common mind. And penny witches of cool. And master fronts of liquid games in the street of color. And dreams that break all speed rhythms of perpetuated nows. And time is the double and space is never level. As the media limits the real. Sugar-coated pills of glitter and money won't speak. And time won't creep. Insane boogie brain, lame drain of blood on channel hip. The pimp of nasty trips of time and space in the city.